Wasteland 3 turned out to be 60 hours of pure entertainment and fun for me that I absolutely loved, to the point where I wondered if I'd been missing out on not playing the previous Wasteland games. Hi folks, Mark back here once again bringing you my review and thoughts on Wasteland 3. And if you're a brand new player thinking of getting into this, then check out my character creation and other tips videos linked down below. If, like me, you're unfamiliar with Wasteland 3, then it's basically a sandwich made up of lots of flavours of other games. You've got the awesome role-playing aspect of the Divinity Original Sin series, mixed with the world of Fallout 4, including the mad wasteland gangs of the Mad Max movies, combined with the tactical turn-based combat of the XCOM games. And you combine all those different ingredients in the bun that is the fantastic humour that holds it all together. And the game is set on a post-nuclear apocalyptic Earth. Humanity has descended into chaos, but you have some enclaves of relatively civilized areas surrounded by wastelands with mad gangs of lunatics raiding the place. It does feel very Mad Max. It also feels kind of retro 1980s because that's the tech level that the world has got back to. You play as the Arizona Rangers, and I'm guessing in the previous games those were some good guys that sorted out lots of problems in Arizona. But now the people of Arizona are in trouble. They need help, they need supplies. And the only way you can get that for them is by travelling to Colorado, where there's some dude called the Patriarch who's offered to send you all those supplies in exchange for a little bit of help. Now, the Patriarch is either the great saviour of humanity or a fascist tyrant, depending on who you speak to in the game. And you're going to have to decide for yourself which you believe and which side you are going to go with. Yes, folks, this is one of those games where you have an awful lot of player choice and you get to decide how the story ends. So the gameplay is very much typical top-down RPG, which sees you point and clicking, running around an area, talking to NPCs, picking up quests that are going to either further the main story or just be side quests and interesting things for you to do. And when you go out into the wasteland, you get to drive around in a great big armoured ice cream truck, exploring the area and finding new locations. When combat kicks off, however, it's down to the turn-based tactical combat, which is kind of like in the XCOM series, running from cover to cover, using action points to carry out activities, shooting mostly, with your characters lobbing grenades and stuff like that. As you play through, you'll find that there are various factions in the game. Usually each area has two, and you kind of have to decide which one you want to support because it's going to upset the other one. It gives you a lot of player choice in how the game world develops and how things will turn out at the end of the game. Anyway, on to the graphics and sound. And the graphics are fairly basic, I thought. You certainly couldn't say this is the prettiest game ever in relation to special effects or animations. However, they're all quite functional, and at no point did I ever really have any issues seeing what I needed to see or work out what was going on the screen. They also have kind of a grainy retro look, which I think is intentional considering that the tech level of the game is around about 1980s, although the game is set far in the future, and I think that retro graphics look kind of fits in with that theme. Intentional or not, I don't know, but the graphics are functional. The sound is on a similar level for the actual sound effects of guns and things going off, but it is next level when it comes to the voice acting. There is some amazing voice acting in this, and I absolutely loved the Western-themed accents of all the characters. It was fantastic and just a joy to listen to.
You'll hear a lot of things about me in this shitty city on the hill. None of them good. But nobody can fault my doctrine, so you don't have to worry.
And there is a banging soundtrack as well. Yes, I know I sound like I come from Manchester. A banging soundtrack going on, especially when you meet a boss. There is some awesome epic music plays that you'll really enjoy. Right then, on to my likes and dislikes, and the first thing I liked right at the beginning of the game was the character creation. The options are there to create just whatever you want. I ended up with a ridiculous looking 2-foot-tall melee brawling tank. It was fantastic. Also, the skill system is really good in this. You can develop loads of different skills and character traits and attributes. There's a quirk system where you can choose to boost your character in one area at the expense of getting some nasty penalty as a trade-off. Check out my character creation guide in the link below if you're going to start this game, because it's going to explain a lot of things that I wish I'd known before going any further in the game. But it's a really good system with the skills, and all the skills are very valuable in the game. And you'll never have every skill that you need, which in itself is a good thing because some of these skills are required for various dialogue options to open certain areas of the game up. Although there is always an alternative way of doing it if you can use your ingenuity or just figure it out or stumble across it, which is always good. But all this means that the game can be replayed several times and you'll get a different experience every time depending on the skills and builds that you've taken. Also, it feels like every skill has its place and uses in the game. The whole game is also incredibly funny. There's humour stuffed in everything. And yes, there are some dark and sad and even some gruesome moments in the game, but it's all wrapped up in this lovely, rich layer of humour that had me laughing out loud and sometimes groaning at the corny jokes. And it was just me. I loved that sort of thing, and it brought a lot of pleasure and entertainment to the game. Something that the lore enthusiasts are going to enjoy, people who've probably played the other games. There's loads of lore about the other games and the background stories and things in the game, but it's not thrust upon you. You discover these lore books as you're exploring and going around the world, and you can have a read through and get some background stories and things if you want. I didn't bother because I don't feel like I have the time to do that when I'm streaming, but it's there for those that enjoy that sort of thing, and it's completely optional. Combat is also really well implemented in the game. I had loads of fun with this. And the best bit is that all the different combat builds and weapons are extremely useful. Now, I went in thinking that, well, a melee character's probably not going to be that great in a cover-based tactical turn-based shooter, right? Where you're running from cover to cover and getting shots off. I couldn't have been more wrong. The melee weapons and the brawling style, which is an alternative to go down, is so much fun and so useful when you build the character outright. It was just a pleasure to play. But better than that is all the different guns were fantastic. There was never a feeling of, well, there's only any point taking assault rifles or heavy weapons because they're the best. No, everything from the handguns, the shotguns, the heavy machine guns, the flamethrowers, the rocket launchers, the assault rifles, the submachine guns especially, I loved them all, and I had a different character built for each particular one, and they were all so much fun and really good. I love that in a game where you don't feel like you are pressed into building one particular type of character for your combat build because that's clearly the best. Not the case here at all. It's very well balanced. And you'll pick up loads of loot and stuff from these combat situations. Now, the loot is a different issue, which we'll talk about in the dislike section. But you get a shared inventory for all 6 characters in your squad in this, which is superb. It makes finding things and storing things a lot easier, and that's a really welcome addition, especially as I'm now playing through Baldur's Gate 3 and having to dig from character to character to find out where I've put the bloody scrolls or the healing potions or whatever. Stuff like that's not an issue here, and the ammunition is shared between them all, so it's just so much easier to sort out. Now, I briefly mentioned it before, but there are usually several ways to fix any situation you come across in the game. It's going to depend on the skills you've got and just the way that you want to play. Yeah, most situations can be brute forced with guns and bombs and stuff like that, which is always fun. But there's always some more subtle way, either through persuasiveness in conversation options, or maybe you've got some sneaky skills so you can disarm that alarm or open that locked door or disable that robot. There's loads of options, and if you can use your ingenuity, you can find different ways of completing any task or quest. I love that. It opens up replayability in a game where you can play through it multiple times and never quite get the same experience. And that's the same with the story as well, of course. You've got so many different options and how to treat not just the main characters in the game, but lots of little side characters and side quests. And when you get to the end, it gives you a nice little story at the end about what happens with everyone you come across and the consequences of each action that you took, which is a really nice feature. I didn't get the ending that I really expected, although it was entirely the ending that came about because of the actions I had chosen. But now I want to play through again to see what I could have done differently and how that would have changed the course of the game. Anyway, there are a few dislikes I have about Wasteland 3 as well, and most of them are fairly minor, and a lot of them might actually be fixed and patched by the time you watch this review. For a start, there's a lot of little bugs left in the game at the moment. Most of them are quite comical and not really a problem, but some were really annoying. Like there were some walls that you could actually shoot through as if they weren't there. but there were some more walls that only the enemy could shoot through, and you couldn't. And that caught me out a couple of times. It was really annoying. I mean, that will get fixed, so it's not the biggest issue. There's no skill reset in this game. Whatever skills and attributes you pick, they're yours for the entire game. There's no option to respec. So think carefully. Do check out my beginner's guide to character creation down below. Yes, I know, shameless plug, but I actually restarted after about 2 hours when I realized I'd spread my skill points unwisely on some of the characters. Loading screens were another issue for me. They do go on forever, or at least they did. I think they've actually been patched at the time of me recording this, so they should be much improved. It's not like it's game breaking, but it does slow down the pace a bit, especially as the world is instanced. It's not an open world, so as you go from one area to the next, you will basically click on the door or the entrance point and it will load that in. And then if you suddenly find you have to go back because you'd forgotten something, you could be met with a lot of loading screens. That should be a lot better now, but just keep that in mind. Now, I did find loot to be pretty bland in this. It does get better towards the end of the game, but when you're looking for upgraded weapons and armor, especially early on, there's not much to find. You will have lots of combat, but the stuff you get is mostly rubbish and boring. And yes, you can sell that to buy new gear, but it's always rewarding, I find, to be given something for defeating a particularly hard encounter or enemy. Cash was also a bit scarce at the start as well, and that was the better route to getting new gear. You'd buy it off NPCs that you found. As I say, it's not a problem late game because you have a lot more cash and you know how to manage it, but at the start, yeah, that was a bit of a struggle for me. NPCs could get a bit noisy in the background sometimes if you're going through a busy area like a market or a bazaar. It could get a bit overpowering with the voices, and occasionally I'd have to run off to find a quiet corner to try and sort my inventory out or choose some skills because, yeah, they kept chattering all the time in the background, although they do shut up if there's any dialogue points, so it doesn't speak over the top of the dialogue options on sections of the game. And I'm going to end this section of the review with what could be a pro and a con, depending on how you look at it. Now, towards the end of my playthrough, my characters felt extraordinarily powerful. I mean, I could clear an entire zone without the enemy even getting a shot back in and me taking any damage. And you know what? It felt absolutely fantastic. But this even occurred in some boss areas as well, and boss fights. And part of that felt a little bit too easy. But on the flip side of this, if the enemy got the first turn of combat, I still felt like they could wipe me out with one shot. They have some pretty powerful weapons late game. And it turned into a case of combat really hinging on who got the first shot in. Now, this is a bit of a problem because when you're going through some of the interesting dialogue options, there's always the option to just attack at the bottom. And if you choose that, you know you're going to get the first turn of combat. However, you feel like, well, I'd love to explore those other dialogue options, but previous experience early in the game taught me that sometimes lets the enemy get the attack in the first turn. And in this instance, if they do that, they're going to wipe me out. So you don't explore all the dialogue quite as much as you would like because you know it's so important to get that first turn of combat in. Now, this might feel different at the higher difficulty levels, but considering that I found the enemies could one-shot me at normal difficulty, I can't see that being different at harder difficulty. So this felt like it was a bit of an issue, but at the same time, it felt awesome being able to wipe out the enemies with my powerful characters and weapons. Anyway, overall, I thought Wasteland 3 was an absolutely superb game. I really enjoyed it, and I would love to play through it again to see if I can get a different outcome. I'd rate it a solid 8.5 out of 10. If you're thinking of picking up this game, I'd recommend GOG.com, my preferred platform of choice. But you can also play it on Microsoft Game Pass if you have a subscription, where for a few quid a month you can play this and loads of other awesome games, which is a fantastic deal. Don't forget to go and check out my new player guides listed down below, and I hope you enjoy the game. If you do, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below.